Hi everybody, my name is Scott Joy, and Randy asked me if I'd put together a quick informal video of just telling a little bit about myself and a lesson that I've learned about health as it relates to ministry. So for a quick background on me, since I've been 20 years old, I've pastored with NAB churches throughout in South Dakota and in Alberta, Canada. However, 8 years ago that all changed. I contracted a neurological condition that affects multiple systems in my body, beginning with my brain and my spinal cord. It causes inflammation. It has just this cascading effect. A long story short is it's left me unable to pastor in a traditional sense. However, I know, and even from day one, I knew that God's call in my life hasn't changed. So with whatever strength I have on a day-to-day basis, kind of like in a snail's pace, I still pursue that call. First and foremost is a love for preaching. I know God has called me to preach His Word, so every opportunity I get and the strength God gives me, I still preach His Word. The other thing, though, I do is I try to have a ministry of encouragement, especially to pastors. Pastors have a special place in my heart because I've walked in those footsteps and those trenches, and I still see myself as a pastor. I call myself a pastor in the pew, serving those who serve others. And that's you, because that's what pastors do. You serve others. So a little bit of what I try to do to be an encouragement and support to pastors is I pray and intercede for a group of pastors specifically and regularly and stay in contact with them. I try to be available to listen to pastors and to encourage them, to be a support and a resource to them where available. My heart of hearts for pastors is to see them experience joy in ministry, because I know that's a tough battle. So in light of that, the prescription that I would share for staying healthy in ministry begins with a love story. And I realize this isn't the most macho first impression that many of you will have of me, but I want to tell you a love story about my wife and I, because she is to this day the delight of my heart. And that journey of delight began 29 years ago. We had a 9th grade math class together. She was turning in a math project, and I just caught a glimpse of her up at the desk by the teacher, and something happened. A spark went off. I tell her that she took my breath away, and I still have a hard time breathing all these years later. We dated through high school and early college and got married at 20, and within a week after that we were candidating in our first church. And ever since then we've been ministering together and serving. We have 3 kids, and what I feel so blessed about is that throughout all of these years, even to this day, when we've been apart for a little bit and she enters a room, I haven't seen her, she can still take my breath away. There is this flutter in my stomach, just as if we were in 9th grade math class again. She is the delight of my life. And that mutual delight we have builds a strength in our relationship, a confidence and a security that enables us to kind of tackle the world and whatever life brings our way. The reason I tell that story is because God's Word in Psalm 147 says this. It says, God's pleasure is not in the strength of the horse, nor His delight in the legs of a man, for the Lord delights in those who fear Him, who put their hope in His unfailing love. God's delight, it says clearly, is not in horses, not in the strength of man's legs. In other words, God's pleasure and His delight isn't in what you and I do. It's in our hearts when we trust Him, when we worship Him, when we rely and depend on Him. When this passage says that God takes pleasure and delight in our hearts, it gives the picture that God is taking this deep sigh of contentment and excitement even, because He finds satisfaction and pleasure in something. That would be us. That would be you. The picture of God's sighing of excitement and delight is picture a hot summer day when you're parched and you take the nice cold drink of iced tea and you have that response of, ah. Well, that response is a response of delight, and that's a picture of what God feels like when He looks at you and I and He sees our hearts given to Him. That sense when you see a cat purring with contentment, that is also, as almost heretical as that sounds, that's also a picture of this delight and contentment that God finds in us. And certainly that picture of the gasp when I see the love of my life enter a room, that delight, that's a sense of what God sees, feels, and experiences when He looks at you. You are the delight of God's life. You are the object of His delight and pleasure, not because of anything you do, not because of what you produce or how well you perform. All of that stuff can be stripped from you, and God still takes delight and pleasure in you. And so the prescription that I have found most meaningful for staying healthy in ministry is this: to spend regular time away with God. To spend regular time away with the God who delights in you. And yes, by now you've figured out I'm talking about taking regular prayer days. And there are all kinds of reasons for prayer days. For prayer and fasting when you're seeking direction and counsel. But in addition to those types of prayer days, I found it was indispensable for me just to spend regular time away with God. With no agenda, no plans. I found it was always a safe place. A safe place where God didn't have expectations of me. I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to produce anything or meet expectations. I didn't have to face complaints. It was a safe place to spend time to let God bathe me in His delight. And out of that delight grows a confidence and a peace and a satisfaction that equips you to re-enter and face the challenges of ministry. Because I know the challenges of ministry are unending. I'm not here to do an exhaustive defense of spending time away with God on a regular basis or a how-to session. I'm simply here to highlight the value. Because what I found in pastoring is the complexity of pressures is just never ending. There are pressures that pull you apart and always demand your time. There's pressures that are weighing you down like burdens. And it's this constant turbulence that keeps agitating. There's one time I was taking a week of prayer and fasting. The first half of the week I spent fasting. The second half I was going to spend in prayer and study. And so I had gone to this cabin in the woods. There's a little stream by the edge, and I had taken a six-pack of Coke for the second half of the week when I was going to break my fast. I know, you're very spiritual. I put the Coke cans in this little stream next to the cabin underneath a little waterfall. By the time I got done with my fast halfway through the week, and I went to grab one of those cans of pop later in the week, I found that underneath that little tiny waterfall, they had been agitating against the rocks all week long. And the agitation of that water and the rocks had created small holes in every single one of those Coke cans. So obviously God didn't want me to break my fast with Coke. But I share that illustration because that's a picture of what ministry can do. It's a constant turbulence, you know this, agitating you on the inside. And unless you have regular time away to be in God's presence, for Him to fill you up, you're going to spring a leak. And you're not going to make the long haul of ministry. And I care about you and I love you enough to say, and I urge you, spend regular time away with God, letting Him insulate you from the turbulence and agitation. Don't look at your prayer day, don't look at time away with God as another to-do or even as a strategy for effective ministry. Instead, look at it as a part of this love story that you have with God. A place where you don't have to be in charge, you don't have to be resourceful, you don't even have to be strong. It's just a place where you can get away with time to hear God's sigh of excitement and delight in you because He is pleased with you. So I find if you'll follow this prescription, maybe even get addicted to this prescription, I'm confident that joy will increase in your ministry, and I'm confident that you'll stay healthy in ministry for the long haul. If there's any way I can pray for you and be a supportive for you in this ministry, Randy can tell you how to get a hold of me. I would love to add you to my prayer list and be in contact with you. May God bless you. I hope you're having a great weekend together. I wish I could be there with you. God bless.